It's about the In and Out 2 movie. We're going to talk all about unpacking anxiety and mental health, and that's coming up
right now.
What is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome to today's show. Hey, if you've never joined us before, I am one of your hosts, Josh. This is my beautiful wife, Christy.
Hello.
We are the couple on fire. This is a Christian podcast. Now, we don't talk about all things Christian-based, but it is a clean family, for the most part, family fun podcast. We'd like to talk about how to take your faith, family, and future to the next level. We talk about all things about abuse. Christy has experienced abuse as a child. We talk about addiction issues. Christy and I are both recovering alcoholics. We talk about all kinds of relevant things that happen today. We talk about marriage things. We talk about a lot of stuff. So if this sounds like something that you would be interested in listening to or watching each week, we are live every single Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. You can follow us on YouTube, on Facebook, or you can listen to us anywhere you find your audio podcasts. Okay.
Done. I shared it to our group.
Boom. You're so good. Okay. So like I said, today we're actually going to talk about the new movie Inside Out 2. But before we jump into that, what do you have? Anything or no?
Well, I mean, I would have said that we went this weekend on Friday to see Inside Out 2.
Well, you can't.
And
because now that's what we're talking about today.
Well, yeah, but what's not going to be part of this is how awful our experience was at the movie theater.
Yes.
So
it was pretty bad.
We went at 7:00 on a Friday, and we've never went, I don't think, to a 7 p.m. show. We usually go to like 5.
We're old people, so we go on old people times.
But we went at 7:00 on a Friday, and it was awful. I mean, kids, like teenagers, 14, 15-year-olds.
Like 10 of them.
Yeah. Running in and out, like they drove there specifically to run in and out of movie theaters, jump up and down the stairs while movies are going on with people.
Laughing.
Cussing, laughing on their phones. Parents went out
Changing
to get
seats.
Managers. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, they were running all over, and then they'd leave, go somewhere else, come back. So anyway, we had to, when the movie got done, we went and got a manager, and we got free tickets for another future date. But the issue is did we really get the full experience from Inside Out 2? And I definitely don't want to use my free tickets to go watch it again.
We're not.
Because
we're going to wait for that thing to come out. On
but we
video.
got the gist, and we figured this has been all over. Like I was telling Josh, I've seen it on TikTok. I've seen it on Facebook. Like everyone's talking about this movie. Some people may have negative feelings about it, but I haven't seen any negative. I've only seen like deep, powerful things.
Boom. And there it is. Actually, that's the anxiety right there, which is what the big topic is about on social media, is really about anxiety. This character, this orange character right here. And we feel like the movie did a pretty good job about depicting all the different angles of it. Now, there were some people that did complain, though. Like, I don't know if, let us know in the comments if you guys have even seen this movie or not, or if you plan on seeing it, or if you have some opinions about the movie. We don't even know how other people are even feeling about this, other than our small circle of people we've even talked to about it. But anyway, so some people are complaining that anxiety was the center focus of it, and that they had some issues with that. But the majority of what we hear is very different than that. And it's some stuff we want to talk about today.
And I feel like that people have said that they missed the whole premise of the movie. I mean, the people coming in to reconstruct whatever they called it, home base or whatever, the center place, the core, the brain.
Yeah.
They demolished it and put up all these like warning signs and said puberty in progress, puberty is hard work. So the whole premise was she's having all these new emotions coming in. Yeah. And it's because of puberty, and they go crazy. Like, read any psychology books. When people start going through puberty, anybody, men, women, it's like they're crazy.
It is, and that's kind of like the 4 points we kind of want to make today about this movie and about anxiety and kind of how it ties into like mental health and stuff. And so, we kind of are just going to kind of break down some things that we've noticed from it, some things that we feel apply appropriately, and maybe we can gain some wisdom even from a child's movie, which I saw the first one, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, I didn't really care for the first movie that much. I'm not big into animated movies. I do like some. But then we watched this one, and even though it was interrupted so many times, I really liked the premise of the movie. I thought it was much more engaging, even at an adult level. And so I thought there was a lot to gain from this movie.
Yeah, because in the first one she had, from a baby, she had joy, envy, fear, and anger.
Mm-hmm.
And then the new one, it brought out
all those.
Well, they already had those.
Yeah.
So, but then the new emotions that came out on top of those other 4 are embarrassment.
He's a big dude.
Disgust or something like that. No, disgust was in the first one. Envy's in this one. It's the little teal girl. That's
yes.
Ooh, yeah. So disgust was the green lady.
And the lazy one.
Whatever. Ennui. And then anxiety. Yeah, and then anxiety or joy called him wee-wee.
Yes.
Wee-wee for ennui or
ennui.
Yeah. So those were the new emotions that were coming in. But what I felt is powerful is they introduced these new emotions, and what instantly starts happening, it starts out small, right? It starts out anxiety is like, someone's like, hey, they called us by the wrong name. Or, they said we live in Michigan and we live in Minnesota. It's okay. Don't correct them. Because we want to fit in.
Yeah.
And that's how it starts, right? It starts being like you're changing your core self to want to be liked or, not want to be ridiculed or get rid of shame, vulnerability, embarrassment, all of those types of things. And that's how it starts to do. And the whole premise in the beginning, when Joy first was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's because Riley started going against her core belief. She started lying.
Yes, she did. Yeah. To fit in.
Yeah. And she's like, that's not who she is, all of those things. So I thought it was really cool the way they introduced them though.
They did. Yeah. And that's why our first point is understanding anxiety, but understanding it through Riley's eyes. And so like Christy's building up to, it's like the movie number 2 leads into her becoming a teenager. And that's when we've noticed like anxiety really starts to kind of grab root inside of us because we want to have friends. We want to be liked. We want to be cared about. We want to, all of these things and so, we allow anxiety to kind of take the reins sometimes and manipulate our core beliefs the way that we are designed, maybe even by God at certain times. And we fight against that, which seems like it's almost like a self-prophesying like circle of things that we go through. Like we're doing things to not have anxiety, but it ends up giving us more anxiety.
Yeah. And I think some of us never let go. I think that's what made this movie so powerful is all these new emotions come in that are all, joy and sadness and anger and fear are all good emotions when used in the right way.
Yeah.
And anxiety and embarrassment and envy and just ennui is like, don't care, they're apathetic or whatever. Those are more negative or tend to be more negative or embarrassing moments. So I think the core thing about it is a lot of us, as we, especially going into puberty, these things happen, these emotions come in. We never let those emotions go. We never let the real healthy ones come back in place. So I think that was a powerful thing throughout the movie is seeing how Riley started interacting with old friends and new friends, because all of a sudden she started feeling all of these different emotions she's never felt before. And she just wants to like get away type of thing.
So a story that really sticks out to me, and I know you're going to say, oh yeah, is that, when Christy's oldest son was younger, he used to want everybody to be his friend, right? He loved everybody, wanted everybody to be his friend. And he was just so easygoing and carefree. And she would always say like, please don't let the world beat this out of him. I don't want the world, an age to beat this out of him.
So sweet.
Because he was so sweet and so over the top to a degree, right? And so he'd make a billion friends anywhere he went. And then as he got into his teenage years, those things started to change. And you can see that it was anxiety driven. Like I need to fit in now. And it's funny how like we go through a certain period of our lives and then we go through hard times as adults. And then we go on the other side of it and we're like, I don't care about fitting in anymore. I know what that took away from me as a human to force me into trying to have all this anxiety to be something that I'm not created by God to be. And then we usually don't figure out those lessons of understanding what anxiety really truly is to us until we're later in life, which is really sad, especially when we're raising kids.
Yeah. And it started out small. In the movie, it starts out small, just doing little things. And then the more the other emotions tried to get in the way of anxiety is like, peace out and get out of here type of thing. So I thought that was a powerful part.
And it is. Anxiety can be so overwhelming and overly consuming about everything that we do. And not just as a teenager, right? And we know the movie kind of leads into this talking about the teenage years. But let's understand anxiety at different levels and stages of life. When we get into marriage, if you don't have children before marriage, that has a whole new separate set of anxieties that come around it. Then you have children, and then your career, if you have a career, and all of these things, it's like anxiety takes root in us at all different levels in all different ways. And I thought that the movie did a pretty good job of depicting.
They did.
They really did.
They did. I thought it was really cute.
Yeah.
I really did think it was
interesting.
A cute movie.
How they did it. All right, so number 2. How about anxiety has a dual nature? A dual nature.
It does. And I think anxiety can be like kind of like anxious feeling. Your heart starts beating. I think it can bring awareness to maybe a dangerous situation like
a
fear.
bear.
It can go, it can go hand in hand with fear.
Can.
Right? Like, okay, I'm going to start feeling like I'm a little bit anxious. That could turn into fear. I think it could be a healthy thing if it's used in the right way. And obviously the movie depicts that too, because that emotion stays. Like at the end, when it shows all the emotions, similar to the first movie, joy and sadness come together and they join and they realize that you need all the emotions to experience really good core memories and things like that. It's the same thing. It's showing that anxiety when combined with joy and sadness and fear and all of these types of things and anger, that they can really balance each other out. But at first, anxiety bottles. I thought this was very interesting how they depicted this in the movie. She bottles up all of the core feelings, fear and envy and fear, disgust, joy and anger, and she shoots them like way back to the back of the brain, and like, I want to be in complete control here. And that's what ended up happening is anxiety is just taking complete control over everything else. Yeah. It becomes the most powerful emotion. It's putting out embarrassment. It's putting out everything else. It's just focusing on anxiety.
It did, right? It did such a great job of showing that, but it does show us, I love the ending of the movie, like you said, that it shows that it's not about not having anxiety. It's about understanding it, because it's good for us to feel anxious.
It's a part of us.
Yeah, I remember when Christy and I first got married, and we've been seeing a lot of pictures of it recently come back up because we just celebrated our anniversary. But she sent me a picture, and I noticed one. We're on the beach. We got married on the beach on the west side of Michigan, and I remember standing there waiting for her to come out, to come down over the sand hill, right? Because it was on the beach, and I remember this anxious feeling that just came over me, and it wasn't even anything bad. It was a good anxious, like an excitement, to us. And so, I just think about, anxiety, we always kind of give it a bad name because we allow it to be all consuming,
right,
like you said. And then, to understand that anxiety has a healthy place within our lives. For us to be free of anxiety, there's no way.
Right.
Right. And God didn't create us to have emotions to be completely free of them, that we have to learn how to understand them better and be able to use them in a dual nature. Right. Like, okay, I'm having really bad, heavy anxiety over something. Okay. But is this excitement maybe that's going on? Is it,
right,
it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It could be a good thing.
In the situation, you have to start talking about it, because you standing on the beach, you could have started feeding into the anxiety of, did she run away? Right. Is she going to trip and fall down and then embarrass herself? And I know that would stress you out if I got super embarrassed, if I tripped and rolled down the sand hill. Like, you could start.
Is it going to rain? Right.
Yeah. You could start feeding into those anxious feelings, or you could feed into the anxious feelings of, I'm so excited. I can't wait for us to say our vows. I can't wait to see how beautiful she looks. It just depends on how you feed that when it comes up.
I agree. And I think that comes to be a good self-awareness, maturity about us. That when we do those things, like, okay, wait a minute, what type of feelings am I having right now? What type of anxiety is this? Because I think it's easy for us to say there's one type of anxiety. Yeah. And that's just not true.
Because a couple of times, even in the movie, a couple things that anxiety first started doing, I'm like, well, yeah, I agree with
Makes
her.
sense.
Like, more than joy. I agreed with what she was wanting to do. And then you just saw, like, over time throughout the movie, it was just getting a little bit worse, and really making her not stay true to who she truly was as a person, and maybe make sacrifices to her core character traits that she wouldn't. And I thought that was, I don't know, I just think they did a really good job with the movie.
They did. It was good. It was cute. All right, number 3. What about coping strategies, right? We have to have coping strategies when it comes to one. You did, but there is ones, right? And the movie did depict some of them, right? It did talk about like breathing, right? Slow down, these things that
her friends came and checked on her.
Her friends came and checked on her, right? Even though that there was a lot of heavy stuff going on, she was inside the penalty box.
Yeah.
Yeah, and her friends skated over to her, and they saw that she was like hyperventilating, and they just, what we would say, create space, right? That's what they say in psychology, is just create space for a minute for someone to be able to feel something, but to know that they're safe in that space. And I think there is good coping strategies with that. And so surrounding ourselves, number one, with people that are going to love on us and not trying to tell us that the way that we're feeling is silly, stupid, or wrong when we are feeling anxious is super important.
Yeah, and the one of the most powerful scenes in the movie, there was 2 or 3 that were the most powerful that you hear people talk about, but one of them was when she started having an anxiety storm. And it wasn't even when she was having anxiety attack, I don't think. It was like a little bit later on in the movie towards the end when they all made it back. And it shows, the motherboard while the emotions do their things. And around it was just anxiety holding the triggers, but there's a whole like hurricane or tornado of just orange going around it. All the other emotions are outside of it. And joy is like, and one of them said it's an anxiety storm, and they depicted it as a storm. And joy breaks through and tries to get her to let go. She can't. And then she says, like, you can't choose who Riley is. You have to let her go. And when she says that, it's like anxiety releases for a second and then joy like pulls her out. And that is a good depiction in the movie of we can get so caught up and we can get an anxiety storm. And sometimes we need someone else, God's word, or a biblical friend or a godly friend to maybe speak a word of truth into us.
So good.
So that we can hang on to it and say, you don't get to say who I am. I'll cry. Because I've struggled with anxiety, and I'm like, you don't get to say who I am. God says who I am. And joy is God, right? Not in the movie. I'm saying the feeling of joy.
Yeah, right.
Like that is one of a Holy Spirit's characteristics is joy. And so I just thought that was such a powerful part of the movie.
It is. And I think, all different levels of life and all different stages of life, we talked about it earlier about how anxiety can be something. And I haven't really experienced anxiety until the last few years of my life, and so I'm having a better appreciation of the struggle of what people can have during moments of anxiety and struggle, and just having someone be there and around you and saying, hey, I'm here for you. I know what you're going through, and not make you, especially as a guy, and I can't speak for him because I'm not one, but I can speak for a guy. That feels like a very weak thing to be able to suffer with something like like anxiety. It feels like a very weak, non-manly thing that's going on. And that's not what it is, right? It's not what it is. It's, it's a moment of struggle, and those happen to us. And the only way we get through those properly and healthy is by finding a good support system to be around. Especially a spouse that's been through it and understands you, and you're able to be honest with like, hey, I'm struggling with this right now. Because let's be honest, people can see it. We don't hide those things very well. Anxiety has a way of like the picture shows, right? Like this picture right here. Let me show you again. This picture, like, look at its hair, right? Like there's like we don't hide anxiety like maybe we think that we hide anxiety. Anxiety is obvious and bright and orange, and it's just, it can be glaring at times. But having the right people around us to help us get through those moments really does make a difference. And that's when her friend showed up, and I really thought that was super powerful.
What's interesting to me, though, is how Satan uses our core ways that God made us to make us feel, like uses the negative feeling to speak negative things. Like men, anxiety comes across as its weakness. You shouldn't be vulnerable. You're a sissy. You're not strong. You're not the leader of your home. If you are doing this. And women, like we're taught, and which God has created this way, to be the more emotional beings. That was what, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not bad. And anxiety for us is typically like, of course you have anxiety. You're emotional. You can't keep your emotions in check. Of course you're out of control. You're not level-headed. You're not stable. You're not this. You're not that. And so the talk is different, but the outcome is the same.
The same.
Like you're not embracing who God is in has made you to be, and dealing with anxiety is a normal part of life. And the more that we try to hide it and not talk about it, the more power that we give it.
We do.
And that's what was awesome about this movie is I wonder if they knew how powerful this movie would come across. Like, so many adults are embracing this movie and the power of its message, of the emotions. I don't know. I would like to know if they thought it was going to have this much of an impact about mental health.
I'd like to hear a story behind it.
Or if they thought it would just be like this cutesy, she's going through puberty, she's going to be having anxiety. Because so many people are talking about some of these powerful scenes in the movie. Joy freaks out on all the other emotions. Like, of course, I'm not always happy. I don't always have it all together. But I have to try to balance this crap out, type of thing. Yeah. And that's reality of it. So I just thought it's cool, that they did this. But
I felt like that was a mom role when that happened.
Yeah.
Instantly when that happened in the movie, I don't know if anybody else has seen this or not. You could let us know, but which we want to talk about. We have a couple comments. I want to talk about those in a second. But I really felt like when that was happening, instantly in my mind, I'm like, that felt like that was what a mom feels like. Like, I have to put a smile on. I have to be there for the kids. I have to make my husband happy, or be the wife my husband deserves, or whatever. However, you would feel as a mom.
Yeah.
You feel like I have to put a smile on my face. No, I don't always feel this way, but I feel like somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like guys can get away with being grumpy and jerks way more easily than women can, or moms.
That's truth.
I believe that.
I believe that too.
Yeah. You're like, oh yeah.
But the beautiful part about this, though, is how the other emotions in there embraced the anxiety part. They all came around and said, like, we need you. It's okay. Like, and they started taking everybody's into it. The whole movie basically anxiety. I've heard the only negative thing that I've heard about it is they're like, well, they made anxiety the main character. I'm like, well, of course they did.
There was a lesson to be learned.
The girl is supposed to be going through puberty, and that's the whole reason why all these new emotions came in.
Yeah.
Joy was the main emotion in the first movie.
Yeah.
The main emotion in this one is anxiety with a few other key, like, you're my backup singer,
right.
Key other emotions in there to help support the anxiety train. But it's a good representation of how it starts.
Yeah.
And if you don't have, like, it leads into our next point, like number 4, which is parental support and guidance. If you don't have, you start dealing with all these things as a teenager. If you don't have a good support system around you from when these first emotions start to come in, you have so much more work to do as an adult to heal from all of that stuff. And the movie depicted that really well too.
It did.
How she had these parents that she freaked out of them like teenagers do. Like, a lot of us parents were like, yeah, that's a teenager. You don't even know what you did. You didn't do anything. And she's like, I hate you. And like leaves and walks out of the room and slams her door. But you need good, comforting friends, family, support system around you to allow you that when you are going to get into it, as a teenager, but then they hold that space for you, as you talked about earlier, to apologize, to come back out and to say, I really don't know what's happening. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to treat you that way. And then dealing with that in a healthy way. And if you don't have that as a teenager, you carry that on into an adulthood. There are a lot of them walking around the streets. And there's so much extra healing that you have to do because of it, because you don't have anyone that's taught you how to deal with it in a healthy way.
Yeah, I mean, let's real talk, right? So this whole point, parental support and guidance, it sounds like it kind of comes from a weird spot because of the other 3. I think it does, but I think it makes the most sense out of everything that we're talking about, because this is the reason why. Is that if we as parents can't get our crap together when it comes to having a better understanding of how anxiety plays a role in ourselves and in our children, we're just going to keep passing these traits on, right? And so I was talking to somebody just recently, and I'm on the phone with her, and I'm like, you have to understand something. Like, your kids are going to act the way that you act. They're going to act and respond to things the exact same way that you act and respond. And so we have to ask ourselves, am I figuring this out? Am I doing everything that I can to help figure out how to manage my own anxiety in my life? And am I responding the proper way? Am I working on that? And if I'm not, how can we expect to be able to support our children, like Christy's saying, to be able to support our kids in a healthy way if we're not good? Because most adults are walking around with major amounts of anxiety. Okay, well, what are you doing about it? How are we working on becoming better? What are we reading about it? What support groups are we part of? Like, how are we educating ourselves to get better at that? So we don't have to worry about raising our children up being the same way that we are, feeling the same way that we are, and not supporting them in a healthy way. And that's why I think this point is so banging powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she had good parents, and not everybody does.
Right. She did have really good parents.
She had good parents. And so let's be honest, we're not here talking to the kids, right? We're talking to you, other adults that are probably our parents. So we have to ask ourselves, are we being good when it comes to anxiety? And if we're not, that's okay. What can we do to get a better grip of this, to get a better understanding of it, to educate ourselves so we can be better support for our children?
And that's why I think therapy is so powerful for adults, especially that didn't have or don't have good coping mechanisms, because just getting it out and talking about it, like right now, I probably, like before this podcast, I had some things going on at work and I can start to feel a little bit anxious, not in an unhealthy way, but just anxious, like kind of start to stress out about, oh man, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. But then coming and just talking about anxiety and coping and support and all of that on here, it starts to make me feel more calm and say, okay, yeah, no, life's not going to end. Like we can do this and we can do this. And that's why therapy is so important, because a lot of adults, maybe you don't feel safe enough to have raw conversations like this with, and having them is the initial step to get it out. Like you have to start being comfortable just talking about it, let alone dealing with it. You're trying to deal with it without talking about it to anybody. You're just trying to like shove it down and like cover it up with like white knuckling, like, no, I'm going to be happy, 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 happy. That's like so fake.
Put my head down, get through it.
And it's going to blow out. That you need to sit down and just be able to just talk about it in general. And if you don't have anybody, that's why I think therapy is so powerful. Because a lot of people go to therapy that I know, they go to therapy because they're looking for the therapist to tell them what they need to do to fix their problems. And that's not what therapy is for. Therapy is for you to be able to talk about your problems and figure out how you need to deal with them and bounce ideas off, and maybe have a professional give you some coping skills of how to do it and where to start. But the work is on you, and talking about it is the first step.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I'm in grad school right now for therapy to become a therapist. And it's amazing to see exactly what Christy's saying. Most of us think that we're going to go to therapists to get advice to fix our problems, and that's just not what it is.
No.
And that doesn't work, just so you know. Like, getting someone else's advice, the only way we take advice is if it's advice that we want to take. Let's be honest, right? And so when we're in therapy, when you go to good therapy is about more or less you talking to the therapist and the therapist guiding you with other questions to uncover new things and new directions so you have a better understanding of what you need to work on. And that's therapy. And you're right. Everybody should have some form of therapy, whether it's a formal therapist or it's a safe person that you can talk to that is willing to listen to you and guide you without giving you all of this advice. And so, are we being parents for our children when they are going through these hard times? Are we being these good, healthy parents? And I would say the majority of us are no. We're just trying to figure it out as we go along. But what are we doing to change that? And I think that's what's so important.
I think a lot of it, though, is like I mentioned earlier about with Josh, when we were talking about one of the other points, is saying, like, if I'm feeling anxious, you can feed into it these specific thoughts, or you can feed into it these specific thoughts. And when we are going into a therapist or talking to somebody about it, it's really to help us change our perception. And unless you're open to having your perception changed, because it's all about what you're feeding and what you're telling yourself in the middle of these anxiety storms, that you're doing. And so unless you're open to hearing different points of view to help change those thoughts that you're feeding your brain, it's not going to go away. You have to learn how to talk to yourself differently and speak truth into yourself and pray and read God's word. But you can read God's word all you want. If you don't learn to say it to yourself and to live it out, it's not going to help you.
It's true.
You have to be able to have that.
That's so true. All right, we have some comments here we want to make sure we had a chance here to get to. So Rob Rinke says, well, here, let me add it to the broadcast here. There we go. Anxiety can be sneaky. It comes out of nowhere sometimes. It
Yeah.
absolutely does. And I think that's the scary part. And that's what causes more anxiety about having anxiety. I know I had for a long time had anxiety about driving on the highway, about, that I'm going to get bored because I get bored really easy. And now all of a sudden I'm not going to be paying attention to things. And sometimes they just come out of nowhere and I'm just like, whoa, my hands are sweaty. So, and that's the truth. And you can't make sense of it. That's another thing about anxiety. Carrie says, I really want to take my middle child to see it. She struggles a lot with anxiety. I think we didn't know this going into the movie.
We didn't.
I think it would be even better watching it again.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, with all of this. So yeah, Carrie, I completely agree. All right, Carrie, what else you got here? Appreciate this conversation. My oldest is close to puberty, and we see a lot of the emotions and the withdrawals and the struggles. I try so hard to model how to handle the big emotions. But this is a great conversation to talk about how to handle both our emotions and how to support our kids in struggles. Yes. Rob says, not only did I have to learn my wife's triggers, I noticed recently that I have to learn the kids' triggers. Yeah, now we become the juggling triggers of the triggers, It's tough. And Carrie says, first time I walked into a counselor's office, I looked right at her and said, apparently I'm really broken. Fix me. She laughed. I think that's how we all feel.
Yeah.
Though. We all go in there. We've never really been taught about what therapy truly is. A therapeutic session is very different than what people think that it is. But when you leave, you're like, I feel a lot lighter, and I can't really explain why. That's good therapy.
It's like church, though. People that are lost and like broken, and they're like, I've just heard about this God person. I don't know where else to turn. They go into a church expecting that to be it, when really it's a relationship with Jesus. But that's where people start, because that's where they first learn how to learn about God and all of these types of things. And therapy is the same way. Therapy is to teach you to have a better relationship with yourself. And you're walking in there to try to be like, I don't know where to go, what to do. And the therapist is supposed to be teaching you how to have a relationship with yourself. So those are the two main things that will help you be happy and be able to help with anxiety in your life. Is how much do you have a good, loving relationship with yourself? Do you talk to yourself in a kind, loving way? And are you honest with yourself about things? And what's your relationship like with Jesus?
Yeah, I think doing Celebrate Recovery for over 7 years, I think the number one hardest thing for people to do wasn't forgiving other people. It was learning to forgive and love themselves. And that is a really, really hard thing to do, because I can promise you nobody is harder on you than you. And I know that from experience. Christy knows that from experience. And, it's hard, and we get anxiety, and it starts when we're little, and it builds from there. And if we don't understand, like, hey, there's a healthy way to deal with this, which I thought the movie did a great job about depicting how the storm comes, how it's going to happen, about real life scenarios, about how it looks, but then how, we can balance those things out and actually have a healthy life. I think it does a really good job. And so, with that, I think that it's important. I have to ask yourself, is anxiety a real problem in your life? And if it is, what are you doing about to get that taken care of? And I think that's a great conversation to have with yourself.
Amen to that.
Anything else?
The only thing I would say is, anxiety can start to stem from so many different emotions, and guilt can be one of them too. And you have to start recognizing where you're carrying around guilt and shame or embarrassment in your life, because that's where anxiety can really start to gain power. And for years and years and years, I carried around a lot of guilt about my kids. I don't know why, I just did. And that was like the one last thing that I really would beat myself up about so much. And I really started talking to myself like, I was a good mom. I am a good mom. I know that I was, and I made mistakes, but I know for a fact I was a good mom. So I'm not going to carry around the guilt anymore about it. And if my kids do something that's hurtful to me, I instantly used to be like, they're not going to love me. I screwed up. They hate me. I'm not being a good mom. And my kids are 20 and 22. Right. And now it's just like, no, I'm not going to allow their bad moods or maybe the things that they're going through in their adulthood to make me feel more guilty about the guilt I was still carrying around from their childhood. I know for a fact I was a good mom. I know that I did. Everything is what God has ordained it to be, right? Like He ordained me to be their parent, and I did. I wouldn't say I did the best I could, because there's days that you don't do your best, right? You choose not to. It's just like, no, screw these kids. I'm not like, they're not dead. But
And that's a win.
And that's a win. But you are honest about that. And overall, I was a good mom and I cared about my kids and I loved them regardless, unconditionally. So I think that's important to start when anxiety starts to rear up in your life. Where is it actually stemming from? Is it coming from guilt? Is it coming from embarrassment? Is it coming from shame? Is it coming from vulnerability? Where is it coming from hate? Like where is it stemming from? And really start to get to the root cause of that emotion and try to start working on that.
It's good. Nothing else to say with that. Hey, if you've made it this far and you haven't had a chance yet, please like, subscribe, or share whatever platform you're on. If you haven't had a chance yet to go on Apple, iTunes, and rate our podcast, we'd really appreciate that. That does help out. We are here every single Tuesday, 7 p.m., and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.